Hello, and welcome to Tonal Diversions. I'm your host, Lori Archer Sutherland, and this is my journey as a multifaceted musician. I'm a composer, clarinetist, and more who is navigating the world of classical music, and I'd love to share my adventures with you. Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm trying out a new setting on my microphone, so we'll see how this ends up after I'm done recording. One of my current projects is writing for flex band. While this type of ensemble has been around for many years for small bands, it really gained steam during the pandemic as a way for school bands to keep playing. I've been intrigued by the concept and have been working on my first flex band piece. In traditional concert bands, we're used to having each instrument get its own part. Flutes have a part, clarinets have a part, horns have a part, and so forth. And sometimes they're further divided into multiple parts, like first, second, and third clarinets. Each part has a role, so a composer may want only trumpets and trombones playing at a certain point, and the music reflects that. In my most recent piece, With Joyful Abandon, there's a theme that I wanted specifically as a piccolo solo, with the clarinet section as the primary accompaniment and the bassoon as another layer of accompaniment. What makes flex band different? The big difference is that in flex band, each part could have a number of different instruments playing it. Depending on the particular ensemble, part number 1 could be played by one or more of the following: flute, oboe, clarinet, trumpet, and even violin. No, violins are not standard band instruments, but smaller schools may not have an orchestra, and this gives more kids a chance to participate in an ensemble. There is no one standard way to write flex band. The different publishers have slightly different norms. I found a few of these when I was researching to decide how I wanted to write my piece. There may be more than what I'm going to talk about here. The form I chose is in 5 parts, with each part having specific instruments. Part 1 is flute, oboe, clarinet, trumpet, and violin. Part 2 is clarinet, trumpet, violin, alto sax, and possibly oboe. And then throughout the rest of the band for the rest of the parts. I'll also include a couple of percussion parts. I'm still figuring out which exact instruments I want for the entire piece. My plan is to have a core set of percussion that needs to happen for the piece to work, but then also include some optional percussion for those bands who have either a large percussion section or they have access to some instruments that most bands might not be able to get. Another form is to do 4 or 5 parts with each part for a different instrument key. So you'd have part 1 for B-flat instruments and part 1 for C instruments. Then part 2 for B-flat instruments and a part 2 for E-flat instruments. Maybe even a part 2 for C instruments. I haven't looked at this one quite as much to see how many different keys each part gets. This one is pretty similar to the format I'm using. It just goes by key instead of specific instruments. The other main form I found was to do 4 parts, but all written for all instruments. I'll admit this one boggles my mind a little bit more, since you could conceivably have a tuba on first part and a flute on fourth, which isn't how we usually think of things. But it could also open up a lot of creativity, and so it's something I'd like to research a bit more and listen to pieces that are in that format. I'm approaching this piece differently than previous band works. I'm not sure how well I'll explain my thought process on this, as I'm still kind of figuring it out myself. In a way, I've done some flex type writing, but it's been for beginner instrumental solos with piano accompaniment. So I've done an easy clarinet solo that I then have rewritten for horn or trumpet or several different instruments. I have a series of Christmas solos that are along these lines, but I've not written an actual full ensemble piece that uses the flex band concept. In a traditional concert band piece, I simply wrote it that way, meaning that I usually had broad ideas for what the orchestration would sound like as I was writing it, such as the piccolo solo I mentioned earlier. In a flex band piece, I need to let go of the orchestration that's in my head and know that it could be a clarinet, oboe, or trumpet playing that theme, or all three. Because of the form I'm following, I do have control over the range of the piece. There's a melodic line that I want specifically played by bass instruments, and so I have it written in parts 4 and 5 in bass clef. I've noticed that some scores, especially for harder pieces, will give extra directions. So they'll say something like, woodwinds preferred measures 42 to 50. So if a trumpet is playing that part, they would just set those measures out if there are woodwinds already covering it. For this project, I'm not going to worry about that. For the forms that have all parts for all instruments, I haven't looked into that enough to know if the composer ever specifies something like treble instruments only in these measures, or something to that effect. That goes along with I need to research this form just a bit more. The project I'm working on is titled Into the Mystic Earth. It's going to be a grade 2 to 2.5 piece, which is roughly middle school level. The piece draws inspiration from Mammoth Cave, Luray Caverns, and even a video game. If any of you remember the old text-based computer game called Adventure, you'll get to experience my musical interpretation of the maze of twisty little passages. Another new thing I've tried with this piece is that I have formed a commission consortium. For those unfamiliar with the concept, it allows organizations to pool their resources to commission a piece instead of footing the entire composer's fee themselves. If you'd like to support the project as a band director or even as an individual, visit tonaldiversions.com for more information. Click on Compositions and Arrangements, and the info will be there. Sign up is through January 15th, 2024. Please feel free to share this with those who may be interested because word of mouth is so important. I'm having a lot of fun working on this. Not only is it challenging because of the flex band format, but I also have constraints due to it being for middle school. I've received some great feedback from a middle school band director who is the commission lead. I am so grateful for Pam's support and feedback. Like I mentioned earlier, flex band has been around for many years, but I'm not sure it was ever taken all that seriously. I think it's great that a number of well-respected band composers have really embraced this type of ensemble. It helped get it on my radar, and here I am trying it out. I'm enjoying the challenge of composing for flex band. It has been an interesting learning experience, and I could see myself trying to write some more in this format. If you have any favorite flex band pieces, I would love to hear what they are. I've listened to some pieces here and there for research, but I would love to get specific recommendations. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Tonal Diversions. Subscribe wherever podcasts are found and share with a friend. Until next time.